security cannot be promised to us, then how are we going to say that we are addressing any of these issues that are historical in nature? We still have huge swaths of land that are being owned by colonizers, quote unquote, not really even quote unquote, but the actual colonizers that we want, that our forefathers fought to get rid of. We still have very good arable lands within the country that are owned by these people, and the people surrounding these lands hardly get any, they do not get a way to graze their cattle. They do not get access to food. But essentially, it's to ask ourselves, if we wanted to impact food security, then what does that mean when it comes to land justice? Finally, as I get the next person to speak, I want to remind you that the mics are still on for requests. I've sent a few invitations, so if you have received a speaker's invitation, please, if you're able to speak, if you want to add to the conversation, then feel free to put it on. Finally, what I would want to say is that what we're experiencing today is a situation where the political class has really come into the space to make sure that the constitutional implementation stalls, where we can see it does not even need much of thought, because we can see if the Finance Bill 2023 was declared unconstitutional, then the bigger question is, why was the regime trying to pass through unconstitutional laws? And we can see from the 2022-2023 Finance Bill and the total rejection of the Finance Bill 2023-2024. So essentially, I believe that Kenyans really also need to stand out and come out in large numbers to demand for a refund. A number of the proposals therein have already been charged on the Kenyan people, including the housing levy. And so with it being unconstitutional, I think it's time we are able to call upon Kenyans to come out and demand that the government provides a refund for this money. Yeah, the mic is open, but in the meantime, I want to invite.
I think Munyeri's speaker is up.
Yes, I want to invite Munyeri as well.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'd like to say that I support all of you guys in what you're saying. Just like to add that biggest problem right now is our political class, is our political culture that has been cultivated over the years, where for them politics is a career rather than service to the people. And now what they are suffering from is the consequences of their actions over the years. So if that does not change, I don't think we will keep circling back to this. If the current political culture does not change, I think we are going to keep circling. We're going to keep cycling into these situations more and more. So it's a good thing that we are coming up with our new ideologies. We are coming up to reject tribalism, which is what politicians have been using to divide and rule us. And we are also knowing, we are seeing politicians for who they are. Yes. So I also think Ruto is the biggest danger to our national security, because if you look at his history ever since he came into power, I think a few months once he took power, we saw the likes of Bill Gates came into the country. A few days later, we're hearing that there are some bills about GMOs. Fortunately, that was shot down by the courts. A few months later, Jill Biden came into the country. And then after a few days, she gave us some billions of dollars. Then after a few days, I think several billion dollars. A few days later, you hear that the LGBTQ organizations have been allowed to register. So that tells you how this guy can do anything for the sake of getting some dollars. He barely understands the concept of national security, because if you look at countries which have independent foreign policy, they don't do this kind of stuff. So, and once you open up your country to foreign meddling, and you yourself are also a threat internally, now you see Kenyans are it's like we are fucked up on two ends, because now he is sorry for that. Because now he's exposing us to the foreigners, and he's also exposing us to his own corruption and his own misgovernance. So I think what we Kenyans need as a collective is to raise our consciousness. Everyone should educate each other about that's the biggest battle. The battle of the mind is the strongest battle. So civic education will go a long way in ensuring that whatever the leader that comes there, as long as the people are conscious enough, then we will never find ourselves in these kind of circles again. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Comrade Munyeri. I probably will make a few comments, and then I invite Comrade Nafula to make a few remarks. But I really want to support some of the strongest points that Munyeri has actually put across, because it's important for us. First of all, is that when we choose people, we must not expect that people who have continuously been criminals can actually change their criminal activities that they have benefited from. And I think Munyeri clearly has outlined that President William Samoei Ruto, who represents this various elitist class that we have in this country, 1997, there was a tribal massacre in this country. President William Samoei Ruto was leading a militia on behalf of Moi under the Kanu youth. In 2007, there was a tribal war in this country. Several people died, burnt in houses. He was at the center of it. In 2013, there was another tribal war. So we cannot continue electing criminals in our political system and expect them to change. How is it possible that you can even dream to be a politician if you don't truly love your people? If you don't genuinely, you're not a patriot. And even this is it's something that we must continue to reflect upon as the people in Kenya, and try to put the historical lenses. I think that was a really good point, comrade. So we hope that we could continue to advance, to make sure that we can historically know the people that, want to grab the political power, and if they're going to advance it in their own class interests. Let us have Nafula, and then we can have Tirop after that. Nafula.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, great. Okay. So mine is just a brief contribution, and to the conversation, and I think it's such a brilliant conversation that's ongoing. I think first of all, speaking about the larger agenda and the movement, I think what has been going through my mind for the past few days is how important it is for us to sit down, sit back, and even as we continue to fight, to take stock of the gains of the movement. I think everyone is awake to the fact that there is an awakening happening in the country. The level of civic education is just ridiculous, and it's happening everywhere in everyday conversations. I was having a conversation with a few friends the other day, and we were talking about how there is absolutely nowhere you can sit down in this country today, whether you're visiting a Mama Mboga, you're in an Uber, you're in a Buddha, where you will not be talking about politics, where you will not be sensing that there's a form of ideology that is taking root, however loose that is, that people are speaking about political ideology in the way that they understand best and in the language that makes sense to them. And that is a beautiful thing. The fact that we're seeing everyday videos of civic education happening in matatus, of people stopping politicians' cars, on the road because they're trying to cut, the line in traffic, that people are realizing that we just can't sit back and take shit, for lack of a better word. So for me, that is the power of the movement. People might choose to gauge the strength of the movement based on whether protests are ongoing or the numbers that are showing up on the street. But I think that is not the metric that we should use to measure whether the movement is alive or not. And so that's why I purely 100% believe in Nane Nane and beyond Nane Nane. So I think it's important for us to, first of all, recognize that this movement is not finite. I think for me, Ruto going is a goal. It's a battle in a war. The war is Rutoism, which is an extension of Moism. And that's a bigger agenda. And so if we look at this movement as it being a finite movement, then we will end up getting back into the same system. And I think part of the failure that past movements in our country have had is looking at wins, however big they were, as being the end as opposed to being the means. The struggle for multipartyism, looking at multipartyism as the end as opposed to it being a means towards liberation. And so I think it's important for us to really think long term when we look at this movement and recognize that even if tomorrow Ruto was to go, Rutoism will not have been uprooted from our country. That is an ongoing struggle because it is the capitalist agenda, it is imperialism, it is such a complex struggle. And so we need to keep it alive. And the only way to keep it alive is to make sure that it continues to take root and that we continue with the struggle, we continue the political education, we continue with our everyday activism in the different spaces that we're in, and recognizing that in the movement, people roles and people different roles and people are contributing, in their different ways. So for me, that has just been like something that has been on my mind for, the past couple of days, and how important it is as well for us to really think about the movement from, not look at the trees, but really look at the forest. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, how do we connect the dots? What's happening in silos, there's people doing petitions, there's people going to the streets, there's folks doing stuff in diaspora, but I don't know if we sat down to connect the dots and look at everything that's happening holistically to really see the progress that we are making. So that even when we wake up tomorrow, because this is exhausting, it's emotionally exhausting as well. We've lost heroes. but we can sit down and say, okay, we are making progress. Let's keep charging forward, to see the bigger picture. And another thing that I think is very vital is how do we immortalize our heroes? How do we immortalize this moment? How can it be a part of political education? And how do we recognize that the young people in this protest are freedom fighters? Because I think the one thing that colonialism has done, for example, is make sure that we iterated history. And that is one of the biggest victories of colonialism. And I think that's also one of the biggest victories of, any sort of oppressive state, is to make sure that you don't immortalize your heroes, because once you immortalize your heroes, once that's a part of history, it means that those people are remembered, and it means that that moment is captured and can be continued. So I think it's important for us to also figure out, how do we immortalize this moment? How do we immortalize our heroes? How do we begin to see ourselves? How do young people begin to see themselves, the protesters, the organizers, everyone who's playing a role in the movement? How do we begin to see ourselves as freedom fighters? Because that is so important, because it shapes the narrative, and shaping that personal narrative contributes to shaping the public narrative. And in that way, we begin to win. So I think it's really important for us to, the same way right now we're having conversations around, for example, not calling this anti-government protest, but pro-governance protest. How do we begin to shape public narrative? How do we begin to root young people in political history, ideology, in such a way that they know that they are contributors, and not just contributors, but they form such a core part of what the history of this country is. And we are forming it right now. We are living it right now. And today I was in a session where Chinese, Japanese ideology was brought up, which is apparently it's called Kiki, which is looking at the idea that within every crisis there's an opportunity. And so right now we are living in this, we've lost so many people. We are calling for justice, and this, and that is a crisis, but there's so much opportunity as well. And so how do we begin to tap into that energy to be able to push us to Nane Nane and beyond? I guess that was my brief contribution to this conversation. And I guess I'll just say viva, and we continue to charge on, and we shouldn't give up. We're gonna get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafula. Viva, comrades, viva. Yeah, you have really articulated some of the most important points. And I particularly like the idea that the ideology in the whole aspect that is taking place in the public square, there is an ideology that actually perpetuates repression. There is an ideology that perpetuates exploitation. There is a political ideology that let a few people dominate the many. And that ideology is capitalism, as you rightly put it, where you have a few people that manages a country mainly as a board of directors for the rich people, for the benefit of the rich people, and continuously continue to divide the majority of the Kenyan people based on certain sociocentric issues. If they don't get a religion as a divisive factor, they will create regionalism, they will create tribalism, with a view to make sure that the majority of the people cannot unite together to destroy their hegemony. This is something that has been advanced even at a global scale, where now we only have ideology that perpetuates business, ideology that perpetuates profits over people, where the big businessmen do not get into politics to serve people, but they get into politics to actually destroy people and advance their profit ventures. So this is the ideology of imperialism, that every time we go to the street, we try to expose facets of the enemy of the Kenyan people, who want to make sure that then, like you have said correctly, that colonialism never actually left. So they actually are only interested to make sure that we have black faces overseeing the interest of the few people and also the foreign interest. In our case, we correctly say that colonialism did not leave, but neocolonialism, under where the white man actually left, but he left the black faces to oversee his interest in Kenya. And those black faces, including Ruto and his billionaire class today, are not interested with the interest of the Kenyan people. But remember, some of the finest patriots, some of the finest young people have martyred. They have been murdered by the state. So we are continuing to lose the best that can always, the bravest. Remember, they are sacrificing their lives in the streets. And for us who manage to live to see another day, we must always, raise the flag even higher of our martyrs, to tell them that forever, you know, the first martyr of this protest was Alex Masai. We must continue to remind not just ourselves, but our children and our descendants, that we shall never ever forget the ultimate price that they paid with their own life. So the aspect of ideology is really important, in the sense that, because in Kenya today we want to advance politics based on clear ideology, but the ideology that is pro people, that which allows the will of the majority to dominate the will of minority, and that which advances the process of the project of the many and not the few. And that is why this kind of space we're calling the People's Assembly, we are saying that we are against them. So it is the many that shall win. And if we turn out on the streets on August 8th and make it clear that this Kenya is not a project of a few people, then there is a chance that we can succeed to give dignity to the martyrs that we have lost. And also, there is a proper chance that we can actually succeed to advance the struggle for the majority of the Kenyan people, and continue to expose the enemy of the Kenyan people. Uh, and indeed, during this time also, like you have correctly said, Nafla, about immortalizing our heroes. If we don't immortalize our heroes will be perverted. Remember, Gashagwa told us that he is the son of a Mau Mau, while we know clearly that is the son of the Home Guard, the sellouts of the Republic of Kenya. So we should continue to direct the anger of the people to we must continue to direct the anger of the people towards their real enemies, and also the symbols of their real enemies. Even Jomo Kenyatta is not the friendly person to the Kenyan Republic. He's one of the land grabbers who still his remains remained in the public land. And we still have a squatter problem. We still have a land issue. So we should exploit this moment to make sure that we redirect the people's anger to the real enemies that continues to affect this country, and to try and bring dignity for the majority of the people, and mobilize the popular camp based on only nothing but the correct line, which is the interest of the majority of the people. You can remember that the toxic attack of anyone who has been on the street, we have been called all sorts of names. We have been called a bunch of anarchists, and just to try and portray that we are not competent enough to construct this country. And it's also very disrespectful for the people who call themselves leaders to say that when we go to the street to demand water, that somebody must have paid us to go to the street to demand water. What kind of thinking is that? If I go to the street to demand better employment, why are you telling me somebody paid me to go to the street to demand better employment while you are not giving employment? If you do not want me to be in the street, give me a job. If you don't want me to be on the street, don't steal the money that is meant to buy medicine, because the people who have stolen money to buy medicine are actually guilty of genocide. You cannot be continuing to steal money meant to treat the most vulnerable people in this country. And then when you get sick, you go and seek the best medical, you know, facilities abroad, and then come home and tell us that we have been paid to go to the street to demand for our healthcare system to work. So this is very disrespectful when as people who we entrust in leadership come up with certain narratives to try and actually arrest the genuine struggle of the patriots and the lovers, the true lovers of peace in this country. They started off telling us that some international NGOs are giving people money to go to the street. If this is the case, why are you vilifying millions of the people on the street whose only mistake is to say that we do not want that you steal our taxes? We do not want for you to overtax us. We do not want budgeted corruption. We do not want an accountability in government. The best thing you can do is to clearly state to the people that you're going to run a transparent and accountable government, that you're going to listen to the people to roll out programs that affect the majority of the people of Kenya. But just don't come and tell us that you people go home because you've been paid money. Who is paying us to go to the streets to demonstrate for, to try to find food in the streets? And even sometimes now, when we go to the street, they tell us no, this street protest was hijacked by some people. If the government, we gave them the power, why are they allowing criminals, mainly paid by the politicians on their side, to actually disrupt the peaceful demonstration and bring elements of criminality into our activity? But we are not surprised, because Ruto himself is a criminal, he's a thief, he's a corrupt guy, he's a murderer. He has done all sorts of things to the people we love in this country. Some of the finest, daughters and sons and our sisters and brothers have been murdered by this state. So we do not expect, this Kenya Kwanza regime to even try to think that they can clean themselves, while the reality is that they are just soulless murderers who are interested in power for the sake of power state, to be able to appropriate the wealth of the majority of the people, but they do not really care about the interest of the majority of the people. We have also seen that even though the media has been very progressive with us, but you can see how the media has been under attack. In the last demonstrations, we were shocked that the Kenya police decided to actually kill a journalist, kidnap a journalist. So these are the people we are dealing with. That if there is any resemblance of support of the people from any quarters, they are willing to extinguish that support from the people's camp by making sure, because I think in the interest of the state, they decided to kill one journalist. And this was like a demonstration that all journalists that takes an alternative view against this government will face the same wrath, will be murdered. Why would you kidnap a journalist and then come and say it is a wrong identity? It is basically to say that any journalist that writes an article to defend the interest of the majority will face the wrath of the criminals. This is what they were saying at that time. Even now, President Ruto has continued to lie to us in the national TV. Every space he has gotten, even when he went to Mombasa for the so called presidential assembly, he continued to lie to us in very negative ways. What we want to know, we gave this government a duty to run out a national project for the benefit of the majority. How many people has this government disappeared? And if the government is claiming that those people the government has not disappeared, where are their names and who disappeared them? That's what we're asking. What about the abductions? We're asking that you're telling us that you have not abducted any people with a straight face, and you're lying to us. We know it. Why don't you tell us? Because we give you our taxes to take care of our security and be able to arrest the criminals that actually put our life in danger. Now you're telling us you did not abduct us. Well, you're not telling us who abducted us. This is the greatest problem that we have in this government, that we are funded to take good care of our interest. Why have you disappeared us? Why have you abducted us? Why are we, the red vest just continue to tell us today that we have some bodies that have bullet wounds, that are in mortuaries? They are not live, they are dead. The government has investigated. Has they investigated? And if they're talking about compensation, we have not seen any attempt to declare a fund for even restorative justice to give to the families that have lost their young ones? Or is it just to go to speak in front of cameras and tell us that you have come up with a clear policy, and this clear policy will be to compensate the people who have lost their lives? First of all, we just don't want you to come up with a fund to compensate the people. After coming up with a fund, we want that the people who are culpable, the enemies of the people, the people who pulled the you know the who pulled the trigger on the innocent, peaceful, demonstrated, frustrated by your corrupt government, are held squarely accountable, and they face the full force of the law. They get into a full public, trial, and make sure that they are jailed. And even after they are jailed, the ill-gotten wealth that is being heaped on their families should be confiscated and be socialized and nationalized to actually protect the interest of the people. This is what we are saying. But don't tell us that you will compensate the people you have murdered. But we want you to go further, and even you have not rolled out a clear process to help us in this process. The other, if we have seen a direct attack of the most important sectors in Kenya, this is what is completely annoying the majority of the people. And every time I think about it, it's the burning fire in our head. Majority of us were only able to access, the higher education because the education at that time was accessible to the poorest people in this country. How is it possible that President William Samoei Ruto and the Kenya Kwanza nonsense can actually commodify education and make sure that only education is available to the people that can pay? So it is education for money. This is something that is crazy for any human being to do, especially that William Samoei Ruto himself benefited from the public resources freely to access his education, and now he's telling us that he wants to turn education for profits, and the lecturers are only looking at our children and our daughters and sons only as a way to make money. So it's just commodification of education, and this is impossible to even try and think that any responsible government can actually advance such kind of a policy. Healthcare, I think we have already talked about healthcare. That is totally under attack. The privatization of the healthcare program, using his insurance company to, to change NHIF to SHIF in a way to only make profits from a public reserve, literally helping himself from the people's coffers. So this is the person we are dealing with, that if we leave him to stay any longer in power and do not challenge him from a popular, intensive struggle from below, then he will continue to destroy the lives and the future of our great country. And that is what we are saying, that we are calling each and every person to open education centers in your homes, educate people in the public transport and in public spaces, and move with a clear weapon to spread the truth and make sure that the people know their real enemy and make sure that they are able to confront their enemy in any space that they get it, including the members of parliament that are running rogue. Now they're in they're in hotels being protected by our resources, with military, with the police. It's annoying that, for example, the members of parliament, how many police officers do they have? They have 2 police officers in their car. They have 1 police officer guarding their rural home. They have another 1 police officer guarding their their homes in the city, and some of them have 2, 3 more homes, while the majority of the Kenyan people are left, under the plight of insecurity. So these are things that, if we tolerate, will only last to the suffering of the majority of the Kenyan people. And that's we are saying that let us stand up to be counted. The only price we can pay, of course, is martyrdom. But even if we were to be martyred by the state, as long as the majority of the people will realize our contribution to advance the status of humanity in our country, then we are not ashamed. At any given time, we are willing to pay the biggest sacrifice with our own life to make sure that the future of Kenya is not just bright, but the future of Kenya stands on the majority to bring out the dignity of the people to live alive, not like an animal. Because this system, comrades, has reduced us to permanent worries. Even this whole talk of peace, how can you be peaceful when you have a sick mother? You cannot take the sick mother to the hospital. You got children you cannot take to school. You are in a family, you cannot provide for your family. You are going home, there is no food. So you're in permanent chaos and violent. So the system, the neo-colonial system in place, the capitalist system that is in place in Kenya, shows permanent violence against the most vulnerable. Even when we see the other elements of even other elements, what we call antisocial activities like prostitution, we are very aware that there is no person that will consciously decide to go and sell his body in the street, but they have extreme circumstances that are forcing them, that has been implemented upon them by a backward rogue state, that they cannot make decisions based not only on things in their head, but they have slept hungry, they have sick people to take care of, and the system has forced them to do things that they will not have wished to do because the circumstances provided by the state is not conducive to advance the interest of the people. Comrades, I think this space um, has run for 2 hours, and probably I will return the mic to the red vest, and probably we can have a few comments, and we can wrap it up maybe at 10:30 with some resolutions and or, yes, and to make sure that at least, I know now for now we're going to have weekly debates, maybe twice or thrice a week, to try and bring out the issues that are dear to us, the issues that we are fighting for, and also to make sure that the truth just can be used to challenge the repeated believable lies that is being moved by the state. Red Best.
Thank you, Comrade Buka. I also want to extend a big thank you to the people who've kept it in this space and being able to contribute here and there. I'd want to say that maybe we give a chance up to 10, 15, in case there's someone who wants to have a quick interjection or a quick input into the discussion tonight. The mic is still open for people to contribute. I want to read a comment saying, Bangladesh PM resigned just days after the protests began. Our Kenyan issue was a bloated finance bill. The politicians took our cries for laugh. Now we are here still suffering, and Zakayo playing his citizens for fools. This is a tweet that has been sent by Vamineta the Guna. And I think it really captures the mood and the moment for many people as we are. I wonder, I know that many Kenyans are out there asking themselves, so now what happens? But I think it's very simple. Our resolve is clear that Zakayo Ashuke, Buka, you mentioned about the artists and the spaces they hold. I want to give a shout out to Comrade Willie Oeba, who's been very out there in the streets and in matatus, trying to educate the citizens and through poetry and spoken word. I think he's doing a very good job out there and really deserves accolades for the work that he's doing. The one thing is to request more artists to join on board. And as we close the space, maybe I'd want to mention that we are here for the long haul. As long as it takes, or as brief as it takes, we're going to be here for the long haul. And the issue that Buka has spoken about in terms of commodified education is one thing that all of us need to really, really think through, because education is the backbone of a society. I believe that the more quality, resourced, and free education should be advanced to everyone in Kenya, regardless of what, whether it's university or primary or pre-primary, because what we have here is true to the fact we've been left to the thievery, and as Comrade Buka has well aptly outlined it, we've left them to help themselves to our coffers. So this is the real situation as it is, and this is why the people are fighting back. And I think for Nane Nane, kila mtu atokeleze. We represent ourselves, we represent our children, we represent our mothers, our fathers, and if they all can join us on the street, that would also be awesome. The one thing that I'd want to say as we close is that, yes, they've unleashed all sorts of violence on peaceful Kenyans, and we've seen it all, and we know that, as Buka outlined, the road to revolution is watered by the blood of our comrades. And I think that aptly puts it, saying that we will not stop demanding for a better Kenya, a new Kenya, Kenya mpya, just because they are shooting at us. We saw what happened in Bangladesh today. All accolades to our comrades in Bangladesh who've been able to dispose a dictator. And may we, as they learned from us, may we also learn from them, because not inafikanga mahali hadi hizo bullets zinaisha, then the people have to be listened to. The one thing I want to warn us is that we be very wary of divisive issues that are going to be put, either tribal or ethnic, religious or cultural. We need to be very wary of those. Tuzione zikikuja. Always ask yourself whether this is the real intent. Yeah. Division is not. We know what we are eyeing for, and you're going for it. So let's keep it going. We know about media manipulation in terms of false information and propaganda. Let's be very wary of that as well. And we know the usual political maneuvering. I see Modhiora Carriera joined in, comrade. Maybe unataka kutusalimia kidogo.
Maybe as Madiora asked for the mic, I know we are finishing the space now, but no problem. Well, all I wanted to mention, comrade, is them, and this I think it's extremely important that in our respective professions, including being an artist, you can be an artist who advances the status quo, or you can be an artist that advances the pro-people camp and that, spreads the idea to defeat reactionary ideas and to defend your people. Even if you're a doctor, you can be a doctor for the rich or you can be a doctor for the people. This is something that can help us clarify. If you are an engineer, you can be an engineer only that satisfies his greed and runs for the project, but also you can be an engineer that defends the interest of the people and uses your profession to advance the majority welfare. In all our fields, in philosophy, for those of us who are philosophers, for engineers, for those who are engineers, for artists who are artists, we must always use what we have to advance the interest of the majority of the people. Of course, for us, we say, if you want to be an engineer, be red. If you want to be a philosopher, be a red philosopher. If you want to be an artist, don't fall for the money that is used for example, Gotha Institute or French Cultural Center or British Council, so that you turn your art against your people, but you use your art to advance the interest of your people, to raise the flag of patriotism, the flag of independence and sovereignty for your country, and to defend your people until your death. That is what history calls us to do. Mudiora.
Jambo comrades, I'm really honored to have joined you guys here today. I know it has been a long season, but finally we are getting to the penultimate stage. I've been studying what has been happening around the world with the culmination of what just happened today in Bangladesh. And I can tell you guys, we should take inspiration from that. Just a few more stabs and the new republic that we've been fighting for all along will be born. I want you to at least use these two metrics to gauge whatever spaces you are in for the period that's left before we get to liberate this country. It may be a couple of weeks more, maybe months, but then our goal is this reconstitution of our government according to the principles, values, and ideals of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. If you're in a space that does not espouse that, you need to exit that space, even if it's your state of mind. At any point, ask yourself if it's going to be possible to reorient our governance. And again, this is not just for those who are in the ruling political elite. It's all the way. Follow that chain from the very bottom. We are almost there. We must make sure that as we march forward, we remain purists. There are those who are not sure about where we are headed, but for the people I see gathered in here, I'm sure you have no doubt. So please be that guiding light. Let us keep marching forward. Let us remain faithful, for we all were born for a time such as this. Let courage not fail you. We've come so far. We can do this, comrades. Tafadhalini, tusiangushe mbogi. Taifa linatutegemea. You may sit back and think that there is someone who has a better formula than the one in your head. As long as you are guided by the principles that are espoused by Article 10, you are that person that we were waiting for. You're that person that you were waiting for. I was talking to some friends of mine who work for the KDF, and they've told me that just so they can be useful on Nane Nane, they are off duty and they'll be in the streets assisting wherever they can if there's anyone that will need first aid or guidance or to at least push away those who will try to do that which is contrary to what we are trying to achieve. So again, I beseech you guys, let's keep mobilizing, let's show up, let's make Nane Nane the beginning of rapture, because that's what needs to happen. For we can do this.
Comrade Modera, I think I finished. Maybe I make the last remarks, and then I give back to the Red Base to close this space. We will have another space tomorrow, and the day after, we are going to have a daily space until Nane Nane to help us clarify our ideas. But my final remark is that on August 8th, we will again be putting our bodies in the streets to defend our motherland, to defend our fatherland, to defend our homeland, and to say that we need only politicians who truly love their people and are willing to liberate themselves from the baggage of colonialism, that we can defeat this neo-colonial project and start the most urgent task to carry out a nation-wide education program, political education, civic education program to birth a new republic called a free, united, liberated Kenya, where its finest men and women can stand the highest pedestal to construct our national project and bring out, clear policies in terms of foreign policy to relate with other fraternal countries based on mutual respect, solidarity, friendship, and to advance, the joy and the happiness of the people. Because for us, I think the best that we can get is to have a country called Kenya with the highest level of happiness for its majority, and also to a sense of pride that we can relate with other people, we can relate with other countries only based on mutual respect, solidarity, and only as human beings, and not as as economic tools or a means to an end, but an end in themselves. That is my final comment, and I give Red Vest to give his final comments and actually bring this space to an end.
Yep. Thank you for that, Buka. One thing I want to say is that we should not be distracted by whatever it is that the political machinations that are going to come by. We remain steadfast, united, and towards the goal. As Buka said, we're not just bodies and individuals, we're also people who are really, really tired by the way things are going in the country. And that said, we must continue to mobilize, educate, empower the communities that we're coming from, and make sure that the path that you're forging is towards true economic independence and social justice for all. The power of the people, if we can harness it well and directed with clarity and purpose, is going to be unstoppable. And we remain at that. Eventually, we'll hold all the corrupt accountable. We're going to reclaim our sovereignty, and we're going to build a future where every Kenyan can stand on his own. They can thrive. They are not exploited, and they're not facing any tyranny in their faces. What I'd want to call upon us is to remain vigilant. Let's be the people who are committed to a better and fairer Kenya. The revolution is not a moment, it's a continuous journey that you're undertaking, but the end is true liberation and make sure all people have the power. I want to close by putting up a piece by one of our poets. His name is Brian Silways from Nakuru. And he had this to say when he did his Matatu Civic Education today. This is number 46, Kawangware. Yeah, 2 minutes, 33 seconds, and then we close.
So mimi naitwa Brian Silways. Nafanya spoken word na nimetoka Nakuru na nataka niwa bless na 1 minute. Nitamani aje bro kabisa. So nikisema story nasema story come. Nikisema story come, nasema story go. Story go, story come. Na story come, story go. So to God be the glory. Malaya hakuna food nowadays na worry. Kwa sababu cases za injustice zimekuwa mingi na corruption imekuwa kama food. Na maana wale mfuko zao ziko full sisi kwenye zetu ziko empty. Atuwakiingia kwa gago ataleta change but after election wanaingia undercover. Huko wanaacha watu wiko kwa street hata hawana kitu ya kwa kama. Eventually tunakuanga jana hatuwezi karanga. Kwa manifesto yao utadhani watakupeleka baba tu kweli ndio kitu wananga. Ile kitu wanakuanga nayo ni tamaa ya mapenzi maana kwa mfuko wamejaza mapeni. Ikikuja ni social media Mr. Politician huko atalexplain lakini huwezi toa comments kwa kazi zao kwa sababu ni black. Hazina tofauti na zile suti zao za black. So kuachwa nayo utaachwa. So wewe mrembo nalilia mbegu ya boyfriend akutaki nikao juu unaweza pata jinsi kwa toja. Na bro kama umeunga kwa jimu usitumie mapenzi ya kifua. Hawa rembo anaweza kwanza juu msi ameunga kwa toja kwa sababu mapenzi si biashara. Mapenzi ya bia ndo hasara. Unampenda kwa dhati anapenda mwingine kwa fit. Unampenda kwa gari anapenda besi yako kwa hafit. Ushaiona how low people with high blood pressure look? They don't look sad. They look up to God and pray. So nitasisitiza as a way to say no to stress. Depression haina form. Itakukosesha usingizi kwa hiyo mattress. Landlord wana plot na ma-agent plot make your night sleepless. Extra pressure. Ukipata padlock extra kwa mlango. Elimu ni ufunguo wa maisha lakini si wa mlango. So hapa education keys ni useless. Sasa vijana wengi tunaenda kuandamana juu hatuna kazi. Alafu tukiambia Ruto hatuna kazi anatuuliza ushaisoma Bible ukakosa job wewe. Story go, story come. Na story come, story go. So mimi natoka Nakuru, kazi yangu ni kufanya spoken word. Hiyo ndo kazi ya, hiyo ndo kazi. Na nataka huyu rafiki yangu pia au bless na 1 minute, ndio na mbarikiwe. Naitwa Brian Silways na 88 tumekuja maandamano 88. Ukiniona huko mtaa yako unisongee. Asante.